Kanye West is running for president. Now, regardless of your opinion of the rapper turned even more famous thanks to Keeping Up with the Kardashians, his campaign for presidency hit a snag in the state of Wisconsin. You see, in order to be on the ballot, he needed a certain number of votes that needed to be turned in by a certain date at 5 p.m. So canvassers were sent all over the state of Wisconsin. The signatures were collected. The campaign person arrived to the courthouse at 4:59 p.m., walked into the courtroom at 4:59 p.m., got on the elevator with the staffer of the office to which they were going, files in hand, arrived in the elevator to the office at 5:01 p.m., at which point she handed over the signatures. Now, a debate ensued. Did these signatures arrive on time? And a more specific question was, what exactly is 5 p.m.? Is it that block of time between 4:59 and 5:01? Or is it the moment that the clock turns over from 4:59 to 5 p.m.? The decision was the latter, and as a consequence, Kanye West is not going to be on the ballot for the 2020 election. But it does highlight that even in 2020, we have a hard time wrapping our minds around what time exactly is. Is time moments? Is it measurable? Well, in the Greek language, there are two different words for time. There's chronos, from which we get the word chronology, which is kind of that marked mechanical time that we have and we look at with our watches or our cell phones. And there's also this idea of kairos, which means the appropriate time. So in our first reading today from the book of Ecclesiastes, we hear all about that second example of the appropriate time or the appointed time. And so we hear in this first reading, which may remind us of the 60s song Turn, 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 there is an appropriate time for everything. A time to mourn, a time to laugh, a time to plant, and a time to uproot the plant. As many of you, I'm sure, are cleaning out your gardens for the fall. There is an appropriate time for everything. And it's knowing when that appropriate time is, that's the tricky part. Which is why we need the spiritual virtue, or the cardinal virtue of prudence. And prudence is precisely that, knowing what the right thing is to do in a given situation, and knowing that there are different ways to respond in different situations. But the church has long taught that prudence is a virtue, and maybe it's just not really sought after because of its association with the word prude, or to be prudish. But it really is about what holiness is all about. It's about trying to understand what is the appropriate action for this appropriate moment. Now, long before we had cell phones and watches to keep track of chronos or our time, it was church bells that marked time. And it was a way in which God could enter into everyday life. Maybe that's a great image for what prudence is all about. It's about allowing God to infuse every moment of our day-to-day life. So, as you go through today, maybe you can pray for an increase and practice this virtue of prudence, that you may know how to act in this appointed time in which you live.